Chapter 7. Motor Sledges and Mountains. Scott had 2 motor sledges now. They were the first motor sledges in the Antarctic, the first on Earth. On October 24th, the motor sledges started south from Cape Evans. 4 men went with them, but Scott stayed at Cape Evans for another week. Oates was unhappy. He wrote to his mother, "We had a very bad winter here. I don't like Scott. We were here all winter, but he didn't learn to ski or to drive dogs. Our equipment is bad, and he doesn't think about other people. I'm going to sleep in his tent on the journey, but I don't want to." On November 1st, Scott and Oates and 6 more men left Cape Evans with 8 sledges and 8 ponies. The ponies walked slowly because their feet went down into the snow. It was hard work for them, and they got tired very quickly. They travelled 13 or 14 kilometres in a day. Behind the ponies came Mears with 1 sledge and some dogs. Mears knew how to drive dogs. Every day, Mears started 2 hours after the ponies and arrived 2 hours before them. After 5 days, they found the motor sledges. The Norwegians began again on October 20th. There were 5 men this time: Amundsen, Bjaaland, Wisting, Hassel, and Hansen. They had 4 sledges and 48 dogs. There was a lot of wind and fog. On the first day, Wisting's sledge suddenly stopped, and the back went down. "Come on, you dogs," he said angrily. "Pull, pull." At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, the sledge moved again. Wisting looked down over the side of the sledge. Under the snow, there was a 50-metre hole. "Did you see that?" Amundsen said. "The ice wants to eat us. Men, dogs, sledges, everything." On the 4th day, they reached the depot at 80 degrees south. There was a bad snowstorm, but they found the flags easily. Next day, the men stayed in their tents, and the dogs played in their holes under the snow. They were all happy. They had a lot of food, they had good equipment, and they were warm. They could travel fast. Next morning, the snowstorm stopped, and the journey began again. "Today, everything is wonderful," Bjaaland wrote in his diary. "But where is Scott? In front of us or behind?" There was no one with the motor sledges. They were broken. Scott looked at them angrily. "It doesn't matter," he said. "Teddy Evans and his men are in front of us. They're good men. They're pulling their sledges themselves. We can get to the pole on foot." Oates looked at Mears. Oates and the ponies were tired, but Mears and his dogs were not. The snow was home for them. That night, Oates wrote, 3 motor sledges at £1,000 each. 19 ponies at £5 each. 32 dogs at £1.50 each. Well, it's not my money, it's Scott's. On November 21st, one of the ponies died. On November 11th, the Norwegians saw the mountains. The mountains were very high, some of the highest on earth. Bjaaland smiled. "There is good skiing up there, Roald," he said. "But can dogs get up there too?" "Of course they can," Amundsen said. "Come on." They left Hansen with the dogs and skied a little way up the mountains. It was difficult, but the mountains were big and beautiful. Behind the mountains, Amundsen thought there was a high plateau of ice. "That's it," Amundsen said. "That's the road to the pole. Tomorrow we can bring the dogs and sledges up here. But now, let's have a ski race. Who can get back to camp first?" They laughed and skied happily down the white snow. "This is like home," Bjaaland thought. "But it's bigger than Norway, and better." In the next 4 days, the dogs pulled the sledges 81 kilometres and went up 3,000 metres. At last, Amundsen and Bjaaland stood on the plateau behind the mountains. They were tired, happy men. Bjaaland looked back at the mountains. "Can a motor sledge get up here?" he asked. Amundsen smiled. "No," he said. "I don't think so. And Scott doesn't like dogs. So his men are going to pull their sledges up these mountains themselves. Would you like to do that, Olaf?" Bjaaland didn't answer. He smiled and skied happily away across the snow. Chapter 8. Across the Plateau. On November 21st, the Norwegians killed 30 dogs. "They were happy," Amundsen said, "and now they're going to die quickly. We need 3 sledges and 18 dogs to go to the pole." When the dogs were dead, the other dogs ate them. The men ate them too. They were good friends, Bjaaland wrote in his diary. And now they are good food. 2 days later, the dogs were fat. Then, in a snowstorm, they began their journey again. After the snowstorm, there was fog, and in the fog, they got lost on an ice river with hundreds of big holes in it. They could see nothing, and it was very dangerous. In 4 days, they moved 9 kilometres. "But the ice is beautiful," Bjaaland wrote. "Blue and green and white. This is a wonderful place, but I don't want to stay a long time." After the ice, there were strong winds and bad snowstorms. They could see nothing in front of them. But every day they travelled 25 or 30 kilometres. Then, on December 9th, the sun came out. They were at 88 degrees, 23 minutes south, 175 kilometres from the pole. 5 more long days, Bjaaland wrote. That's all now. But where is Scott? For 4 days, Scott's men stayed in their tents near the mountains. "There is a bad snowstorm outside," Oates wrote. "It's too cold for the ponies. and our clothes and skis are bad too. On December 9th, Oates killed the ponies. They were tired and ill, and they could not walk up to the plateau. Then Mears and his dogs went back to Cape Evans. "We can pull the sledges ourselves," Scott said. "We can do it. We're all strong men." There were 2 sledges and 8 men. They went 24 kilometers a day. On December 31st, Scott said to Teddy Evans and the men on the second sledge, "You can't ski well. Leave your skis here." So they pulled their sledge 24 kilometers without skis. Next day, Scott went to Teddy Evans's tent. "You're ill, Teddy," he said. "You can't come to the pole. Take 2 men and go back. Tomorrow." Teddy Evans was very unhappy. "2 men, Captain," he said. "Why not 3? "Because Bowers is going to come with me," Scott said. "He's strong. We need him." "But you have food on your sledge for 4 men, not 5, Evans said. "And Bowers has no skis." "I'm the captain, Teddy," Scott said. "You do what I say. Take 2 men and leave Bowers with me." Oates wrote to his mother, "I'm going to the pole with Scott. I am pleased and I feel strong." But in his diary he wrote, "My feet are very bad. They are always wet now, and they don't look good." On January 4th, Scott's men left Teddy Evans and went on. Scott, Oates, Wilson, and Edgar Evans had skis, but Bowers did not. They were 270 kilometers from the pole. December 14th, 1911, was a warm, sunny day. 5 Norwegians skied over the beautiful white snow. It was very quiet. No one spoke. They were excited and happy. 6 more kilometers, Bjaaland thought. Is there a British flag? I can't see a flag, but... Look, Hassel said. What's that over there? Bjaaland left his sledge and skied quickly away over the snow. What is it? He thought. Is it? No. It's nothing, he called. There's nothing there. Nothing. 3 kilometers. 2. Roald, Hansen called to Amundsen. Go in front of me, please. It helps my dogs. That's not true, Bjaaland thought. His dogs are running well today. But Hansen wants Amundsen to be first. The first man at the South Pole. They skied on and on, over the beautiful snow. Stop, Amundsen said. He waited quietly for his men. This is it, he said. Bjaaland looked at him. But there's nothing here, he said. Amundsen smiled. Oh, yes, there is, he said. There's something very important here, Olaf. Very, very important. What's that, Roald? Us. We're here now. Isn't that important, Olaf? The 4 men stood on the snow and looked at him. Then, slowly, they all began to laugh. Chapter 9. The End of the Race. The Norwegians stayed 2 days at the pole. They left a tent there, with a Norwegian flag on it. Inside the tent, they left some food, a letter for the King of Norway, and a letter for Scott. They left some more black flags near the pole, and one 28 kilometers north. Then they skied away, back to the north. It's a beautiful day, Bjaaland wrote. The sun is warm, the snow is good. But the dogs run too quickly. I can't get in front of them. They found their depots easily. There were 10 between the pole and Framheim. Each depot had a lot of food. They laughed and skied quickly down the mountains. Often they skied 50 kilometers a day. On Friday, January 26th, 1912, they came back to Framheim. It was 4 o'clock in the morning. Inside the wooden house, Lindström, the cook, was asleep. Amundsen walked quietly to his bed. "Good morning, Lindström," he said. "Is our coffee ready?" The black flags waited at the pole. "What's that, Captain?" Bowers said. "Over there." "Where?" Scott asked. "What? Oh, my God." They all saw the small black flag in the snow, 2 kilometers in front of them. Slowly, they pulled their sledge to it. Next day, January 17th, 1912, they found the tent and the Norwegian flag. Near it, Scott took the British flag from under his clothes and put it up. In his diary, Scott wrote, "This is a very bad day. We are all tired and have cold feet and hands. It is minus 30 degrees centigrade, and there is a snowstorm. Great God, this is an awful place." They turned north. 5 tired, unhappy men in the coldest, emptiest place on earth. On March 13th, 1912, Scott's wife, Kathleen, looked at her morning newspaper. "Norway's flag at South Pole," it said. She looked at it for a long time, and then began to cry. "What's the matter?" her friend asked. "My poor, poor husband," Mrs. Scott said. "What's happened to him? Where is he now?" Scott's men were always hungry. There were not many depots, and they were difficult to find. "We need to find the next depot today," Oates wrote. "But how can we find one black flag in all this snow? It's very difficult. And there is food for 4 men, not 5. They were all tired and ill, too. Oates's feet were black now, and he could not feel them. On February 16th, Edgar Evans died. On the 17th, they were past the mountains. At the depot there, they ate one of the dead ponies. Then they went on. 10, 11, 12 kilometers a day. They were ill because their clothes were not warm, and they didn't have much food. The temperature was sometimes minus 40 degrees centigrade. On March 7th, Scott looked at Oates's feet. They were big and black. "I can't pull the sledge now," Oates said. "It's very difficult to walk. Am I going to lose these feet, Captain?" Scott looked at Oates's feet and said nothing. On March 9th, they found another depot, but there was not much food. Slowly, they walked on. Oates's feet were worse every day. March 17th was Oates's birthday. He was 32. He lay in the tent and listened to the wind outside. He was very cold, very hungry, and very, very tired. He wrote a letter to his mother and gave it to Wilson. Then he got up and opened the door of the tent. He stopped in the door for a minute. Scott, Wilson, and Bowers looked at him. They didn't speak. "I'm going outside for a minute," Oates said. "I may be some time." They didn't see him again. At Cape Evans, the Englishmen waited. On December 11th, Mears and the dogs came back. On January 3rd, Teddy Evans and his 2 men arrived at Cape Evans. The Terra Nova came and went. Winter began. Scott did not come. The Englishmen waited all winter at Cape Evans. Then, on October 26, 1912, they started for the south. 2 weeks later, they found a tent. There were 3 bodies in the tent: Scott, Wilson, and Bowers. They put the bodies under the snow. Then they took the men's letters and diaries and went north to Cape Evans again. In Scott's diary, they read, "Oates died like a good Englishman. We all did. Please, remember us and look after our families. We did our best." No one found Oates's body, but he is there, somewhere, under the snow and the wind, in the coldest, emptiest place on earth.